At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's begin. The dead don't bleed copper, but the Santa Trinidad reeked of it anyway. Seamus O'Malley pressed his sleeve against his nose as he stepped over what was once a Spanish sailor. The man's flesh bubbled and ran like tallow, leaving bones fused to the deck in poses of agony. 3 days adrift, the galleon should have stunk of rot. Instead, the scent of hot metal clung to the air, so sharp it cut into his sinuses, and something deeper, like salt on his nerves.
Mother of Christ!
Breathed Tom Farley beside him. The boatswain's usual bluster had fled.
What manner of devil does this?
The kind that leaves a prize? Calico John called from the quarterdeck. His voice carried forced cheer, but even their flamboyant captain couldn't hide his unease. Keep searching, lads. The Spanish don't sail empty. They'd found the galleon at dawn, her sails slack, drifting in circles off the Torneo's bank. A fortune in anyone's ledger. A Spanish treasure ship unescorted and seemingly abandoned. Except Spanish sailors didn't abandon ship, and they didn't die like this. Seamus moved deeper into the gun deck. The 18-pounders sat cold in their carriage, unfired. The gun ports remained closed. Whatever had taken the Santa Trinidad, her crew hadn't tried to fight back. Or hadn't had time. A whimper echoed from below. Seamus froze. Tom heard it too, his hand dropping to his cutlass. They exchanged glances and descended into the hold. The darkness pressed close, broken only by the thin light that filtered through the grating above. The copper smell grew stronger. They found him half buried under a pile of splintered cask in the deepest part of the bilge. A Spanish officer, his uniform soaked through with sweat and worse. He looked like he'd been left for dead. His eyes rolled wide when he saw them, and babbled in rapid Castilian.
Diablos que me non sobrere, lensus delus pura.
Tom grabbed the man's collar.
Speak English, you papist dog!
Devils,
The Spaniard's voice cracked.
devils, they rock on air. They came from the mist with lances of pure right, or muskets or cannon. Nothing touched them, their armor.
He laughed, high and broken.
Perfect, like striking glass with feathers.
Where's the gold?
Tom shook him harder.
Gone, taken. They wanted the gold, the silver, even the iron from our cannons. They stripped it all, left us to burn.
The officer's fingers clawed at Tom's arms.
You must flee. They're still out there, in the devil's new domain. The sea itself rejects them. Compasses spin, the air thickens against you.
A low hum resonated through the hall, a sound deeper than the creak of wood or slap of waves. Ominously, it was felt from the edges of the black water and into the depths of their own souls. Seamus felt it swelling in his marrow.
We leave now,
He said. Tom opened his mouth to protest, but another sound cut him off, a sizzle like water on hot iron. Above them, men screamed. They ran for the ladder. The Spaniard's laughter followed them up and echoed in the dark. On deck, chaos. A line of fire carved the main mast and split it like kindling. The wood around the cut glowed cherry red. Pirates scattered as another beam of blue-white light lanced from the fog bank to the starboard and caught a man named Gibbs in the chest. He had time for one shocked gasp before his torso caved inward. The edges of the wound cauterized instantly.
cut the lines!
John roared.
Get us clear!
And Bonnie stood at the rail, her pistol raised toward the fog.
There's something in there. Moving.
The fog parted. 3 figures emerged and walked across the water's surface as if it were solid ground. They stood 8 feet tall, their bodies encased in armor as dark as the depths of the ocean. The plates were a collage of shifting hues, one moment the bronze of a cannon, the next the verdigris of a sunken wreck, then a color with no name that pained the eye. Their heads were elongated with 2 black expanses where eyes might be. One raised a limb. Light gathered at its tip.
Down!
Anne grabbed Seamus and hauled him behind the capstan as another beam seared overhead. The mizzen boom exploded in a shower of splinters. A pirate named Davies, either brave or stupid, stood and fired his musket at the nearest figure. The ball struck the armored chest dead center on a solid plate. It sparked, whined away, and the armor was unbarked. The figure turned towards Davies. The light gathered again. Davies never had time to reload.
Cut those fucking lines or we're all dead!
John's voice lost all pretense of calm. Seamus drew his knife and went for the nearest rope. The Santa Trinidad drifted away from their sloop, the Revenge. The fog swallowed the figures on the water again, but that low hum remained. They made it back to the Revenge with 9 men. They boarded with 15. As they sailed hard for Nassau, Seamus watched the fog bank recede. The Spaniard's words echoed in his head. Devils that walked on air. Armor that couldn't be touched. He had been at sea for 8 years. He had seen men die in every way the Caribbean could devise. Storms, disease, grape shot, and cutlass. But he had never seen anything like the clean, absolute death those beams delivered. Never seen armor that could turn a musket ball like rain off canvas. Tom spat over the rail.
Devil's work, certain sure.
Devils don't need armor, Anne said quietly. She stood apart from the others and still watched the horizon. And they don't walk, they fly.
Then, what were they?
Someone asked. Anne remained silent, but Seamus saw her hand move to the rosary she kept hidden beneath her shirt, the one she claimed she didn't believe in anymore. NASA stank of rum and rotting fish, but after the copper death reek of the Santa Trinidad, Seamus welcomed it. The Revenge barely dropped anchor before John was off to the tavern, spinning the tale for drinks and sympathy. By sunset, every pirate in port knew about the ghost galleon and the devils in the fog. By midnight, they called John a coward or a liar, sometimes both. Seamus sat in the corner of the fatted calf and nursed his second mug of Kill Devil rum while the stories grew around him. Each telling made the creatures taller, their armor brighter, their weapons more terrible. Nobody mentioned Gibbs's collapsed chest or how Davies died with a half-loaded musket in his hands.
Load of bilge,
declared Ben Hornigold from the table near the bar.
John Rackham sees his own shadow and invents devils to excuse his empty hold.
Then explain the Santa Trinidad. Anne's voice cut through the laughter. She stood in the doorway, her red hair still damp with salt spray. 50 guns, 300 tons, drifting crewless. You think the Spanish just forgot about her?
Hornigold shrugged. Plague, most like. All mutiny.
Plague that melts flesh but leaves no smell or rot. Mutiny that burns through a mast without powder. Anne moved into the room, and men shifted aside. She'd earned that respect the hard way, with blade and bullet. Something new is out there. Something that makes the King's Navy look like river barges.
Even if you speak true, Hornigold said, what of it? We've troubles enough with Governor Rogers sailing here with pauldings and nooses. Now you want us to chase fairy stories?
I want you to think. Anne's hand rested on her pistol. Whatever has the armor, that weapon, they took Spanish gold, a galleon's worth. You think they'll stop there? A new voice rumbled from the stairs.
Lady's right.
Every head turned. Edward Teach descended into the common room, and the crowd made way for him. Blackbeard had that effect. 6'5" with a beard that reached his chest. He commanded attention without a word. Tonight, he wore his famous coat, black leather with silver clasp. and he carried 3 pistols on his baldric.
I've heard the stories,
he continued, and claimed Hornigold's abandoned chair. The wood groaned under his weight.
Not just from John's crew. 3 merchant ships gone missing past the tornado's bank. A Royal Navy scout that came back with half her crew mad, babbling about lights under the water.
He produced a pipe and packed it slowly.
And this morning, my own lookout spots something.
He struck a match on the table. The flame danced in his dark eyes.
A Spanish scouting party, what's left of one, found adrift of Cistern Cay. Their boat burned through the hull. One survivor, half dead from exposure.
Blackbeard drew on his pipe and smoke wreathed his face.
You want to know what he told me?
The room had gone silent except for the creak of timber and the distant sound of a drunken song from another tavern.
He said they found it. Devil's Cay, they call it. An island that was not there last month. Surrounded by fog that turns compasses mad. They tried to land. The demons came out of the jungle. Warriors in armor that turned their musket balls to sparks.
His teeth showed white through his beard.
Invincible, the Spaniard said. Cannot be killed.
Then we leave it be,
someone called out.
Plenty of other prizes in the Caribbean.
Blackbeard stood. The crowd stepped back.
Bring him,
he called toward the door. 2 of his crew dragged in another Spanish officer, a young man with frightened eyes and a soiled uniform, the survivor from the scouting party. They forced him to his knees before Blackbeard's chair. The man muttered desperately in his own tongue.
Por favor, I have told you everything.
Blackbeard leaned down, grabbed the man's chin, and spoke a sharp line of Spanish to get his attention. Then he straightened, and his voice boomed in English.
Now, in a tongue the rest of us understand, tell them about the armor.
That threat worked. The Spaniard spoke, his English broken but clear enough.
The armor, it's like nothing of this earth. It swallows light. Bullets, they strike and do nothing. He fired a full volley, 20 men, and the demons advanced. Their lances burned through Manuel like he was paper.
Nothing is invincible,
Blackbeard said. He drew one of his pistols, aimed it at the Spaniard's head.
You believe these demons can't be killed?
Senor, I saw.
The pistol roared. The officer toppled backward, a hole between his eyes. Blood spread across the floor. Seamus felt a cold knot form in his gut. In this room, men saw mercy as weakness, and Blackbeard just proved he had none. Anne half drew her pistol before she caught herself.
Christ bones, Teach. Was that necessary?
Every man dies from a bullet to the brain.
Blackbeard reloaded, his hands moving in a swift, familiar sequence.
Spanish, English, or demon. The only question is getting the bullet there.
He looked around the room and met eyes until men looked away.
I'm going after this Devil's Cay. Whatever guards it, whatever treasure it holds. But I won't go alone.
You're mad,
Hornigold said.
Even if the stories are true, they will learn how to kill them.
Blackbeard's voice carried absolute certainty.
Every armor has a weakness. Every enemy can bleed. We just need to find the right way to open them up.
He turned to Anne.
You've seen them. These devils on the water. What did you notice?
Anne was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her words were careful. They moved unnaturally, too smooth, like they were gliding instead of walking. And the armor, it felt like something other than metal. It bent in places metal shouldn't.
What else?
The weapons. They needed time between shots, a handful of seconds, but noticeable. She frowned. And they stayed together, never spread out, never flanked, like they were following a plan that didn't account for us fighting back. Blackbeard smiled. It was a predator's smile.
There we are. They can be studied, understood, and what can be understood can be killed. He looked around the room again. So who's with me? Who wants to be richer than kings? Who wants to be the crew that killed demons and took their gold?
Silence stretched. Then a voice spoke from the corner. Captain Charles Vane, young and vicious. What's your take?
Equal shares for all who sail. Double shares for captains. Triple for whoever kills the first demon.
Blackbeard's eyes glinted.
And if their weapons can be taken, can be used. Imagine what we could do with lances of light. Imagine the King's Navy trying to stand against us then.
You're talking about war with hell itself.
No,
Blackbeard's voice dropped low.
I'm talking about proving that English iron and English courage can stand against anything, even devils.
He paused.
Besides, with Rogers coming with his pardons, how long do you think this life lasts anyway? Better to die taking the greatest prize in history than dance on the governor's gallows.
Anne holstered her pistol. The revenge is in. Vane nodded slowly. The Ranger as well. One by one, other captains spoke up. Not all. Hornigold left with a shake of his head, but enough to make a fleet. Seamus watched from his corner and felt the rum turn sour in his stomach. He'd wanted simple piracy, rob a merchant ship, make some gold, eventually buy passage back to Ireland. But he never signed on to fight unkillable demons with perfect armor. But Anne saw him by the capstan. She knew he kept his head when the beams flew. And in the pirate world, that kind of reputation both protected a man and put him in harm's way. Sure enough, she found him as he tried to slip out. "You're with me, O'Malley." Her tone made it a command.
Captain Bonney, with respect.
You saw them. You held your ground. You kept your wits. Her green eyes held his. I need men who can face this without pissing themselves. Men who can think while the world burns around them.
I'm no hero.
Good. Heroes die quick. Survivors are what I need. She stepped closer. Double share for you if you sail with me. Triple if you're still breathing at the end. Triple share of a galleon's treasure. Enough to buy more than passage home. Enough to buy land, a life, a future.
When do we sail?
He heard himself say, and smiled. It was almost as unsettling as Blackbeard's. Council meets tomorrow. We plan, we prepare, and then we hunt. She moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and O'Malley, start melting down everything lead you can find. Something tells me we'll need more bullets than usual. The Council of Nassau met in Blackbeard's cabin aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge. Seamus never boarded Teach's flagship before. 40 guns, 3 masts, and a hull reinforced with captured Spanish iron. The cabin itself spoke of plunder from a dozen nations, Turkish carpets, Portuguese wine, a French harpsichord that nobody could play. Charts covered the table, held down by daggers and pistols. The captain stood around the table, a pack of predators eyeing a kill. Blackbeard dominated one end, and nearby was John, who had finally emerged from his rum-soaked sulk. Charles Vane lounged against the wall and cleaned his nails with a knife. Stede Bonnet, the gentleman's pirate, looked out of a place in his clean coat. 3 other captains Seamus didn't know by name filled out the council.
8 ships.
Blackbeard began without preamble.
Near 400 men, against an unknown number of enemies with weapons we don't understand.
He smiled.
I like the odds.
You're assuming we can even find the Devil's Cay, Vane said. The Spanish officer could have been lying. No. Anne spread a new chart on the table. Look at the pattern. Every missing ship, every sighting, they form a rough circle around these coordinates. She tapped a spot of empty ocean. Whatever's there, it's new, and it's growing bolder. John finally spoke up.
Even if we find them, how do we fight them? You saw what their weapons did. 1 shot, 1 kill. Then we don't give them clean shots.
Blackbeard traced a finger across the chart.
Naval bombardment first. Cannon fire from multiple angles, constant and heavy. Make them keep their heads down.
Cannon? Against that armor? Bonnet asked nervously.
A musket ball glances off a solid plate, but a 12-pound ball of iron moving at that speed?
Blackbeard shrugged.
Even devils must respect momentum. A single shot might not break them, but a dozen hitting the same spot will crack hell's gates.
Anne leaned forward. We need a landing party, too. If they have a base, a ship, something that powers those weapons, we take it or destroy it. You volunteering? Vane sneered. I am. The room went quiet. John opened his mouth to protest, but Anne cut him off with a look. Small group, fast and quiet. While you're pounding the beach, we go around, come through the jungle. She looked at Blackbeard. Unless you have a better plan.
No, it's sound.
He studied her.
Pick your crew. 20 men, no more. Veterans only.
I want O'Malley. Seamus tried to react as every eye turned to him. He hoped to stay invisible, just another sailor in the crowd. The Irishman? Vane laughed. He's a pressed sailor who never left. He kept his head when the demons attacked. He held fast, he stayed calm. Anne's jaw set. That's worth more than bravado.
The lady has a point,
Blackbeard said.
Take who you need, but the main assault needs preparation too.
He turned to the room.
Every man needs double powder and shot. Every gun needs double crew. If one team falls, another takes their place.
What about the weapons? Bonnet asked. If we could capture one.
Then we change the game entirely.
Blackbeard's eyes gleamed.
Imagine it. Weapons that can burn through a ship's hull in seconds. No navy in the world could stand against us.
Scared, Calico? Vane sneered.
Cautious. There's a difference. Enough!
Blackbeard's fist slammed the table.
We sail in 3 days. That gives us time to gather supplies, prepare the crews, and...
He smiled darkly.
Practice our aim. Every man shoots every day until we leave. I want them hitting targets in their sleep.
The meeting broke up, and captains left to prepare their ships. Anne caught Seamus's arm as he tried to leave. You think I'm mad? Choosing you. He met her eyes.
I think you're practical. You need someone who won't charge in seeking glory.
Exactly. She released his arm. John would make it about proving himself. Vane's men would compete for kills. But you just want to survive. She turned to go. 3 days, O'Malley. Learn to shoot better. Your life will depend on it.
3 days later, they sailed with the morning tide. The fleet formed beyond Nassau Harbor. 8 ships, black flags flying. The Queen Anne's Revenge led, her 40 guns loaded with double shot. The day was clear, but toward the southwest, an unnatural fog bank lurked on the horizon. Seamus stood on the Revenge's deck and checked his weapons for the 100th time. 2 pistols, loaded with bullets he had cast himself from melted pewter. A cutlass sharpened to a razor's edge, a knife in his boot, another in his belt. Around him, the crew made similar preparations. Some prayed, others drank. A few sang old songs from home. Nervous? Anne appeared beside him, dressed in sailor's slops, with her hair tied back.
Terrified.
Good. Means you're not stupid. She gazed toward the fog. You ever wonder what they want? Why they're here? Does it matter? Maybe not. But I'd like to know what I'm killing. She touched the pistol at her hip. Or what's killing me. The fog grew closer. Compasses spun. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds. Men crossed themselves and spat over the rail for luck. Then they saw it. Devil's Cay rose from the water like a fever dream. Black sand beaches, a jungle that seemed to writhe even from a distance. And at its heart, something that reflected light. Wrong. A structure that hurt to look at directly. Mother of God, someone whispered. She isn't here, Anne said grimly. Just us and them. A light flashed from the beach, then another. The demons saw them. Blackbeard's voice roared across the water.
All guns! Fire as you bear!
The world exploded. Cannon fire turned the morning into thunder. 8 ships, over 100 guns, all firing at once. The black sand beach erupted in fountains of earth and flame. Through the smoke, Seamus saw them. Armored figures emerged from the jungle's edge, a dozen, maybe more. They moved with the unnatural gliding motion.
They used the strange trees for cover and fired their weapons between volleys. Light gathered at their tips. A beam lanced out and caught the Ranger's foremast. Wood exploded in steam and splinters. Another beam struck a gun crew on the Queen Anne and turned 3 men into charred meat. But the pirates kept up their fire. A direct hit from a 32-pounder caught one of the demons' center mass. The armor that turned musket balls crumpled like paper. The figure flew backward, hit the jungle edge, and didn't get up. A cheer went up from the fleet. They could be killed.
Landing party!
Anne shouted.
Now! While the focus on the ships!
3 longboats, shallow draft painted black, waited. Seamus found himself in the lead boat with Anne, Tom Farley, and 18 others. They pushed off from the Revenge's lee side and rowed hard for the island's eastern shore. Behind them, the battle raged. Cannonballs whistled overhead. Energy beams split the air with a sound like ripping canvas. The fog seemed to pulse with each exchange, as if the island was alive. They beached in a small cove, hidden from the main battle by a spur of black rock. The sand crunched wrong under Seamus's boots, too sharp, too uniform. The jungle beyond looked diseased, leaves too green, vines that moved without wind. "Stay close," Anne ordered as she checked the prime on her pistols. "Aim for the joints or fire together. Overwhelm one spot. We find their base, the ship, whatever makes those weapons work. We take it or we burn it." They moved into the jungle. The sounds of battle faded, muffled by vegetation that seemed to absorb the sound. The air tasted of copper and superheated atmosphere. Every instinct Seamus possessed screamed to run. 20 yards in, they found the first body. The body was neither human nor demon. Something else, 8 feet tall with 4 arms clad in what looked like organic material. Something had burned its head clean off. "The demons have enemies," Tom muttered. "Or they don't like witnesses," Anne replied. They pushed deeper. The jungle grew stranger. Trees that bled sap the color of rust, flowers that tracked their movement, ground that gave off heat without sun. Seamus's compass spun freely, useless. Then, through a break in the canopy, they saw it. The ship, if ship was the right word, carved a furrow through the jungle when it came down. 200 feet long, made of something between metal and ceramic whose surface was a collage of shifting hues. Parts of it throbbed with a soft internal luminescence. Other sections were dark, damaged. "Jesus Christ," Tom breathed. 3 demons stood guard at the entrance, an iris of overlapping plates. They hadn't noticed the pirates yet, focused on the battle that raged on the other side of the island. Anne made quick hand signals. "Spread out, take aim, on my mark." Seamus sighted down his pistol. 60 feet, long range for a flintlock. His hand was steady despite the fear that crawled up his spine. Anne's pistol cracked. Then Seamus's, Tom's, and others in rapid succession. 2 demons fell, the armor shattering where concentrated fires struck. The third turned, weapon rising, light gathering. A second volley took it in the chest. The armor broke like glass and the demon collapsed. They rushed forward. One of the men, eager for a prize, tried to grab the weapon from another fallen demon. As his fingers closed on it, the weapon gave a sharp hum and delivered a jolt that threw him back, who cursed as he fell. Anne knelt by the first weapon. "Looks like they choose their owner. Stick with the one you grabbed if you get one." Up close, Seamus could see through the shattered armor. The thing inside was uncanny. Elongated, too many joints, skin like burnished bronze, a smooth expanse of skin where a mouth should be, and solid black eyes that reflected nothing. "Inside," Anne ordered. "Quick!" The iris door was half open, damaged. They squeezed through into a corridor that curved obscenely, with floors that sloped unnervingly. Light seemed to be ambient, without source. The walls hummed with an energy that Seamus felt in his jaw. They moved deeper. A doorway hissed open, and a beam of light caught 2 men before anyone could react. They cut down the demon responsible, but the party was smaller now. They left 4 more men to hold a key junction, and their pistol shots echoed as the main group pushed on toward the ship's heart. They followed the hum to the core room. It grew stronger, more painful until they reached a chamber. A sphere of light, 10 feet across, pulsed in a framework of the same strange ceramic as the hull. Energy conduits ran from it throughout the ship. A demon, unlike the others, stood before it, alone. Taller, its armor more elaborate, with interlocking sigils that shifted and reformed across its surface. It turned as they entered, and Seamus swore he could feel its attention like cold fingers on his spine. It raised its weapon. The light gathered faster than the others, brighter, and shot it in the chest. The ball struck dead center. The armor cracked but held. The demon staggered, yet remained standing. It fired. The beam took Tom Farley in the stomach and burned through him instantly. He had time for one surprise sound before he folded in half. Everyone fired at once. 8 pistols, 8 balls of lead that converged on a single target. The demon's armor exploded in a shower of fragments. It fell backward and dark fluid pooled beneath it. But more arrived. Seamus could hear the gliding motion approach.
The powder!
And shouted.
Bring up the powder!
They'd brought 2 casks, 20 pounds each, enough to split a ship's hull if placed right. They rolled them next to what appeared to be the core's base, where the conduits were thickest. The first demon appeared in the doorway. Seamus drew his second pistol, fired. The armor cracked but held. The demon raised its weapon. Anne's cutlass flashed, aimed for the arm that wielded the weapon. Her steel slammed into the creature's wrist and knocked the weapon's aim wide. The beam seared a black line across the far wall. She reversed the stroke and drove the point through the cracked chest armor. The demon made a sound like escaping steam and collapsed.
Light the fuses! Now!
She ordered. Seamus struck flint to steel. Once, twice, the fuse caught. Sparking and hissing, 45 seconds, maybe less.
Run!
They ran. Through corridors that made no sense, past doorways that opened onto rooms full of incomprehensible machinery. Demons emerged from side passages. Some they shot, some they simply outran. The fuses burned behind them and counted down to hell. They burst from the ship as the first explosion shook the ground. The blast wasn't the black powder. A chain reaction ignited in the conduits, an energy that fed on itself.
Down!
Anne tackled Seamus as a wave of light and heat washed over them. The ship screamed, metal tearing, energy venting, something vital dying. The second explosion was the powder. The third was the power core itself. Light rose like a pillar into the sky, visible even through the jungle canopy. The ground shook. A wave of unseen energy washed over the island, silent and absolute. In the distance, the cannon fire stopped. Then, silence. Seamus raised his head. Where the ship once stood, only smoking wreckage remained. The strange ceramic had melted and fused into abstract sculptures. The hum was gone. The copper taste faded from the air. "We need to move," Anne said and helped him up. "Get to the beach." They ran through a jungle already in flux. The 2 green leaves browned, the once moving vines hung slack. The island's unnatural life died with the ship. They burst onto the beach to find a massacre. With their power source destroyed, the demons' weapons died. They sparked and fizzled, and some even exploded in their wielders' hands. Their armor, already proven vulnerable, became their tomb. The pirates charged with cutlass and pistol and turned the beach into a killing ground. Blackbeard stood over the body of their apparent leader, the armor more elaborate than the others. He had taken its head clean off with a boarding axe. A purple fluid that mimicked blood stained the black sand.
Anne Bonny!
He roared when he saw them.
You magnificent bastard! You did it!
The cheer that went up from the assembled pirates could probably be heard in Nassau. The wreckage yielded treasures, though no gold. They found the Santa Trinidad's chests, their contents fused into a single, worthless lump of slag by the core's destruction. The demons had no use for it, but they found other things. Metals lighter than steel and stronger than iron. Jewels that held light inside them. Sheets of material that could bend but not break. And weapons. Most were dead, their power core gone with the ship. But 3 still functioned. would fire their beams a dozen times before going dark. Blackbeard claimed one, and another. The third went to Charles Vane after he killed 2 surviving demons with just his cutlass. The journey back to Nassau was subdued despite their victory. They'd lost 60 men. The Ranger took damage that would need a month in dry dock, and everyone on the beach saw how easily the energy weapons killed, how helplessly they'd have died if the armor were perfect. But they'd won. They'd faced devils and won. The fatted calf never saw a celebration like it. Every pirate in Nassau wanted to hear the story, to touch the strange metals, to buy drinks for the men who had killed demons. Seamus sat in his corner, a leather pouch heavy on the table. His share came in the form of something better than gold. 3 of the jewels that held light. A merchant in Charlestown already offered a fortune for just 1. Enough to buy passage home. Enough to buy land when he got there. Enough to start over.
Leaving us then?
Anne stood beside his table, her own prize visible at her hip. One of the still functioning weapons worn like a pistol. That was always the plan.
Plans change.
She sat without invitation.
We did something impossible today. Killed unkillable enemies. Took weapons from another world.
She leaned forward.
This is just the beginning, O'Malley. Rogers is coming with his pardons and his nooses. But now we have weapons the King's Navy cannot match. We could build something new, a republic that even England would have to respect.
Or we could all hang as the men who consorted with devils. She laughed.
Maybe. But what a story that would make.
John swayed toward their table. Since the battle, he drank hard to forget how he had frozen when the demons charged.
And, love, come celebrate properly. I'm busy, John.
With the Irishmen. Come now.
Anne's hand moved to her weapon. Walk away, John. You showed your true self on that beach. Everyone saw. His face flushed.
I fought.
You hid, while Seamus charged with me, while children younger than you stood their ground.
Her voice was cold enough to frost glass.
We're done, John. Have been since you tried to call retreat.
He swayed there for a moment, then stumbled away. Anne watched him go with something like pity.
He used to be brave, she said quietly. But some men find their limit and can't pass it.
Everyone has a limit.
Maybe, but some limits are further out than others.
She stood.
The offer stands, O'Malley. Stay, fight, build something that matters.
After she left, Seamus sat with his jewels and his rum and thought. He could leave, take his prize and vanish, return to an Ireland that might never even remember him. But the man who wanted that, the simple sailor who just wanted passage home, felt like a stranger now. When he closed his eyes, he saw that pillar of light rising from the dying ship, felt the deck roll under him as he charged through bizarre corridors, remembered the moment when Tom Farley died and he stood his ground, lit the fuse, and trusted in gunpowder and luck. What he discovered on that island was capability. He remained terrified, but he knew now that when the world turned against him, he could meet it with lead and steel and a stubborn refusal to die. 3 days later, when the fleet sailed out to meet Governor Rogers' squadron, Seamus stood on the deck of the Queen Anne's Revenge. The energy weapon given to him hung at his side. Vane died in a drunken duel as he tried to fire his weapon at another captain. It had overloaded in his hand, killing them both. The weapons kept their secrets. The British ships appeared on the horizon, white sails bright in the morning sun. 20 vessels, 2,000 men, the might of empire come to bring order to chaos. Blackbeard stood at the bow, his own alien weapon in hand. They had forged the strange metal into crude armor, plates that could turn a cutlass or deflect a pistol ball. The crude armor offered enough protection.
They want us to surrender,
Teach said to the assembled crew.
Take the king's pardon, bow our heads, pretend to be tame.
He raised the weapon, and light gathered at its tip.
They called our enemies devils. Well, we've sent those devils back to hell and stolen their fire.
The British ships drew closer. Signal flags went up that demanded surrender. Blackbeard fired. The beam of light lanced across the water and through the lead ship's mainmast. The wood vaporized, leaving a perfect cauterized hole. The return fire was immediate, a thunderous broadside. But the pirates learned from fighting demons. They abandoned neat lines. They moved and fired, their ships weaving through cannon smoke like ghosts. The British gunners, accustomed to predictable targets, found their shots falling wide. 3 British ships were burning, 5 pirate vessels were damaged but still fighting. The British lines wavered, undone by sheer confusion and terror at the impossible weapons they faced. Seamus raised his own weapon, sighted on a British gun crew, and fired. The light was clean, absolute in its killing. Horror gripped part of him at how easy it was. The rest of him already looked for the next target. The battle raged through the morning. Eventually, the British commander, his own flagship crippled and his fleet in disarray, signaled a retreat. He must report this new, unbelievable threat. That night, as they sailed back to Nassau, Anne found Seamus at the rail. Still thinking of Ireland? He looked at the alien weapon at his hip, at the stars above that no longer seemed so distant. She followed his gaze, then her hand went to her shirt. She pulled out the small wooden rosary, held it for a moment in the starlight, and then let it drop into the dark water below. "Now," he said, "thinking about what comes next." She smiled. "Rogers will be back, with more ships, more men. Then, we better be ready." "We?" Seamus touched the weapon's strange metal. It was warm, always warm, like something alive. "You're right. We did something impossible. We killed demons, stole fire from another world." He met her eyes. "Maybe we can build something impossible, too." Anne clasped his shoulder. "Welcome to the revolution, O'Malley." Behind them, Nassau's lights beckoned. A pirate republic armed with weapons from beyond the stars. An empire built on impossibility. The age of piracy evolved. And Seamus O'Malley, who wanted nothing more than to go home, realized he was already there. The black flag flew, the strange weapons hummed with alien power, and somewhere in the dark between stars, other ships sailed toward Earth, drawn by the silent scream of their destroyed scout. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, they were free. They were alive. And they proved that humanity, with all its violence, greed, and magnificent stubbornness, could stand against anything the universe threw at them. Even the devils in perfect armor. Even gods from distant stars. They'd killed them all the same, with iron and lead, powder and courage, with the inalienable human right to refuse to kneel. The golden age of piracy became something else entirely. Something the universe never saw before. Something it would never forget.